Good evening and welcome to the U.S. Senate Republican primary debate of the independent, nonpartisan Indiana Debate Commission. We're coming to you live from the studios at WFYI Public Television in Indianapolis. Joining me tonight are the three candidates who hope to advance to the general election in November to challenge incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly. The winner of that election will represent the people of Indiana in the U.S. Senate for a 6-year term. I'm your moderator, ABDUL-HAKIM SHABAZZ, the editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org and an attorney at the Indianapolis law firm of Lewis & Wilkins. For the next hour, the candidates will debate a variety of issues. Many of those questions came from you, members of the public who submitted the questions to the Indiana Debate Commission about the concerns that you have. None of the questions, nor the topics that will be asked tonight have been shared in advance with any candidate. Now, it is clear that the candidates agree on a number of issues. For instance, they agree that when it comes to immigration, that a wall should be built along the border with Mexico. They also agree that the Russian investigation is, quote, a witch hunt and must end now. And they're also strong supporters of the Second Amendment right to bear arms, and they support arming teachers in the classroom. So we will not spend any time on those issues in the questioning. But instead, the candidates can speak on those topics if they so choose during a segment later in the hour, which each will be given an opportunity to address a topic of his choice. This will allow the candidates to discuss something they feel is important but has not been touched on in the questioning. Or it gives them an opportunity to go back to a topic that was discussed earlier so they can delve into it deeper, or they can talk about anything they want. We just remind the candidates of two things. Number one, the moderator is not on the ballot. And number two, we ask all candidates to wait until the debate is over before they campaigns tweet out a victory. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to our candidates. First, Luke Messer, a member of Congress in the House of Representatives. He represents Indiana's 6th Congressional District, which is mostly east and southeast of Indianapolis. TODD ROKITA, also a member of the House of Representatives. He represents Indiana's 4th Congressional District, consisting of many counties west and northwest of Indianapolis. And Mike BRAUN, he is an auto parts distributor of Jasper in southwest Indiana. He is also a former state representative. Now, the candidates' positions on the stage and the order in which they will answer the questions were determined by lot conducted by the Debate Commission. After I ask a question, each candidate will have the opportunity to respond for 1 minute, and there will be rebuttal periods of 30 seconds as needed. If a candidate exceeds that amount of time as response, I will politely, and that's politely, gentlemen, ask you to stop. At this time, the candidates can further introduce themselves and make a 1-minute opening statement, starting with Representative Messer.
Hi, it's an honor to be here tonight. You know, throughout this campaign, I've tried to stay laser focused on Joe Donnelly. And that's important because, after all, that's really what we're here to choose tonight, is who's the best candidate to take on Joe Donnelly. You know, Joe Donnelly says he's conservative when he's back here in Indiana, but the truth of the matter is he goes to Washington and he votes with his party's liberal leadership 85% of the time. He's not who he says he is. As I've said throughout this campaign, I am exactly who I say I am. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son of a single-parent mother, and I am a person of faith who is a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment conservative who supports President Trump. Indiana deserves a true conservative in the United States Senate, and President Trump needs a true ally in the United States Senate if we're going to get this country turned around. And as the President says, make America great again. I look forward to the opportunity tonight, and I thank you for watching.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Representative TODD ROKITA.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You know, this race is coming down to who you can trust to be tough enough to beat Joe Donnelly and support our president in draining the swamp. Is it Mike BRAUN? He raised taxes 45 times, including the largest in state history, then reduced his own sales tax on his business to 0. And now we find out he has tax liens. He doesn't pay his taxes. He's only going to add to the swamp. And he's been a Democrat his entire life, voting that way. Is it Luke Messer? He doesn't even live in the state. He lives in the swamp. And the second house he has isn't in Indiana either. It's a vacation home in Tennessee. Even worse, he's disparaged President Trump during the election in 2016 repeatedly on CNN. I'm the one you can trust with the fight to drain the swamp and beat Joe Donnelly. I'm 100% pro-life. I have an A rating from the NRA because I believe in the God-given right to defend ourselves, and I've never raised your taxes. I'm ready to end illegal immigration, end sanctuary cities, and I want English as our official language.
That's your time, Congressman. And now we'll hear from Mr. BRAUN.
I'm Mike BRAUN. I'm a lifelong businessman and Republican, a strong conservative, and an outsider. I'm running for Senate because I'm fed up with business as usual in Washington. A little bit about me. I grew up in Jasper, Indiana. Took a small company to a national one over many years. Before that, I got a degree at Wabash in economics, went to Harvard Business School. I moved directly back to my hometown. Proud of that. We now have 850 employees across the country and 65 locations in 39 states. I'm doing it, I think, for the right reasons. And there's a clear difference between us. I'm a career businessman. These guys have been in the game. You're going to hear lots of, I think, lies this evening because they got a poor record, including voting for amnesty and Planned Parenthood. I will go there not for the pay and the perks, but for the right reasons, like the founders intended. Serve and come back home. Look forward to talking about my vision for the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we begin the question period for our candidates. We'll begin with Mr. Messer. And our first question comes from Marie Christine Pence of Plainfield. Now, while her last name may sound familiar, we can assure you she is not related to our vice president. She asks, if you are elected, what are the 3 specific actions you would pursue as a senator during your first 6 months in office?
Look, I think our 3 biggest priorities need to be getting after this economy because frozen paychecks are a giant challenge for working families. President Trump is doing that. He needs more allies in the Senate to help him. Strengthening our national security, rebuilding our military. President Trump is doing that, and I voted with him to make that happen. And we need to reform the United States Senate because, frankly, the broken filibuster, whatever it used to be, it contributes to partisan gamesmanship in the Senate that's making it impossible for President Trump to succeed. But to do all of those things, we have to beat Joe Donnelly because Joe Donnelly is standing in the way. And if the listeners out there today get one thing out of this debate, I think it's important that they understand Mike BRAUN is a lifetime Democrat who voted in Democrat primaries for 38 years. How can Hoosier conservatives trust him to be a Trump-Pence ally and someone who votes for our values?
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. ROKITA, if elected, what are the 3 specific actions you would pursue as senator during your first 6 months in office?
Thank you, Abdul, and thanks for the question, Ms. Pence. Listen, we have to continue to work on term limits. I co-sponsor the term limit bill in Congress, and I believe in term limits. It's just not talk. I served under a term limit as your Secretary of State, and I'm voluntarily term limiting myself now as a congressman. I have the strongest lobbying ban in Congress because you shouldn't use these jobs as a stepping stone for your lobbying career. And I want to help President Trump end illegal immigration by building the wall, a real wall, not a fence that you can pass drugs through. That's why Nancy Pelosi was smiling ear to ear the other day. It was just a few miles of some fence, and that's why I voted against that atrocious spending bill. We have to end sanctuary cities. I want to slap handcuffs on local politicians who don't abide by federal immigration law and make them felons. And I want English as our official language so that we can be united as a country. You can't do that unless you have a common language. And we have to continue to work on the spending, of course, Abdul. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. BRAUN.
When I get there, the first thing I'm going to do is not get cozy in Washington. The 2 guys I'm running against have built a career in politics, and they can talk a good game here, but they've got a record to defend. When I get there, I'll be able to walk in and talk about things like health care, because I've had to deal with it in my own business. I'll be able to talk about infrastructure because we addressed it in a state that these 2 guys now, one guy was saying do the same thing back when he was on record and was for indexing fuel taxes. You've got to be careful. When guys are saying stuff and calculating their votes based upon wanting to stay in politics, it's tricky. For me, I've got real-world experience on how to deal with these problems. Why would you trust 2 folks that have been part of the problem for this amount of time? You're never going to get any change in D.C. if we keep recycling the same guys from the farm system of politics. Let's try to do something a little different, and I'd be the guy to do it.
Thank you. Gentlemen, would you like to take advantage of the 30 seconds for rebuttal?
Yes,
we'll go to Congressman ROKITA first, then Mr. Messer, then Mr. BRAUN. Mr. ROKITA.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about records here, and we have Mr. BRAUN, who's on record for authoring the largest tax increase in Indiana history, plus 45 others. At the same time, reducing to zero the sales tax on his own timber business. That's the height of hypocrisy. That's the last thing we need as a record. I'm on the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee in the House, and we passed a bill, a 5-year road funding bill that didn't raise taxes, didn't borrow money, and gave Indiana $1 billion a year for 5 years. That's how you lead.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Messer.
You know, I thought TODD ROKITA was running the most dishonest campaign in Indiana history. Virtually every one of his attacks on me, there's no truth to any of them. But until I saw Mike Braun's most recent ad, where he stood before Indiana voters and called himself a lifetime Republican when he has voted for 38 years in Democrat primaries. He spent $6 million in this campaign. He never supported a Republican during any of those years. And the best I know, he can't even demonstrate a picture of a Republican yard sign in his yard during those years. And suddenly we're supposed to believe him.
Thank you. Mr. Braun.
This is what you get out of two career politicians that are taking their last gasp. And I've voted only in local elections to lean in on doing something in my own community. My wife is here, and you ask her, Luke, we were lifelong Republicans and voted only to sway local, in our local races. And
Congressman,
you're going to interrupt or let me
finish? Please let me finish.
And when it comes to the gas tax, Governor Daniels, Governor Pence, and Governor Holcomb's signature legislation and all state legislators were for that bill.
Thank you, sir. Actually, gentlemen, we got a lot of questions to get through. We have a Lincoln Douglas era period coming up where you are more than happy to go after each other as much as you want within time constraints. But let's move on to the next question. And we begin with Congressman ROKITA. Each one of you has repeatedly, this is a general question from our audience. Each one of you has repeatedly emphasized your strong support of President Trump. And we receive more questions about that than any other topic. Some ask if you disagree with the president on any of his policies, and if so, what are they? Congressman ROKITA, we'll start with you.
I think President Trump has done a great job as president. I mean, more deregulation in 1 year than even President Reagan was able to do in 8 years. Tax cuts that are returning $1,000 bonuses to Hoosiers and Americans alike, $85 on average back in your paychecks. I think he's doing a great job. The president knows that I have his back when he needed it most against crooked Hillary Clinton. Meanwhile, Luke Messer on the Clinton News Network, otherwise known as CNN, disparaging the president repeatedly. Mike Braun, nowhere to be found, probably because he was voting Democrat. And by the way, Mike, you mentioned Governor Daniels and Governor Pence and others. If you're voting Democratic in your county, you couldn't even vote for them in the primary. That's the problem, and that's why you shouldn't be running to try to buy a Senate seat. Now, President Trump's doing a great job, but because he knows I have his back, if there is a policy disagreement, it's going to be a healthy disagreement, and that's who you need in the Senate to always put Hoosiers first. He knows that I have his back during the elections when these guys weren't around.
Congressman. Mr. Braun.
Here's where it's tough on a couple of old career politicians. So the one on the right, never Trumper, even after he was a nominee. And that's because he's so establishment, he didn't want somebody from the outside to come in because it's going to shake up his career. And this guy over here, he is on record. President Trump is vulgar. President Trump is not presidential. And only came around when it was inevitable. You're quoted as that, Todd. It's heck to have a record. You can't trust people that say one thing. Now, it's different if it's 20 years ago. This is just a couple years ago. And President Trump was an outsider, a businessman. He doesn't want more people from the swamp, career politicians, and neither one of them, with any honesty, they've changed their tune. I'm on record as saying President Trump was the inspiration for why I ran, and he needs more reinforcements like me, not two guys that have changed their tune very recently.
Thank you. Congressman Messer.
Look, nobody agrees with anybody all the time. I mean, I'm married. I think anybody that's married out there knows you occasionally disagree with your spouse, don't you? I mean, so there are disagreements. But let me tell you what I've learned in dealing with this president is that he has an unconventional way of doing things, and he comes out of the gate with some strong opinions, and he virtually always gets back to the right place. Look, President Trump's unconventional leadership has led to a moment in the world history where North Korea and South Korea is coming together and talking about having North Korea disarm their nuclear program. If that happens, President Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. I think the thing that voters have to ask themselves today is who has the record of being a true ally for President Trump. Todd ROKITA says he has the president's back. Look, the president's campaign made Todd ROKITA pull down campaign advertising because he was faking the president's support. And Todd doesn't vote with the president on the tough governing votes either. Mike BRAUN is a lifetime Democrat. He wants you to say shake it up.
Thank you. Thank you,
It would
Congressman.
shake it up to have a lifetime Democrat be our nominee.
Gentlemen, I know you have 30 seconds for rebuttal, but I would be appreciative if in your rebuttal you could answer my original question and give me specific policies where you might have a difference of opinion with the president. Mr. ROKITA, we'll start with you with the first rebuttal.
You know, I'm going to tell you, I'm very proud to have the Trump Indiana 2016 endorsement. They didn't endorse these two guys, although both asked, because they knew who had the president's back. These two guys are about obsessed with cardboard. One has cutouts, the other one's talking about yard signs. When I talk with the president, we're not talking about yard signs. He knows I have his back. I was against that spending bill, and the president didn't like it. I could tell you that. Although he signed it, it was foisted on him by the Republican and Democrat establishment. And that's what we have to stop. $1.3 trillion in overspending.
Mr. BRAUN, you have 30 seconds. Could you, in that 30-second rebuttal, could you throw in a place where you might disagree with the president?
I mean, what I've seen so far, I'm going to agree with him on most things because he's going to approach it as an outsider, as somebody that's thinking out of the box. And Todd ROKITA changed his vote on these last spending bills because there was a conservative in the race. And he's voted with Luke Messer 95% of the time. So if you want somebody that's going to be there in sync with President Trump, outsider, businessman, done something in the trenches of conservatism, not been endorsing the backside of a paycheck, government paycheck their entire careers.
Congressman Messer, I'll give it a shot with you. In your 30-second rebuttal.
Listen, I mean, this is what the media wants to do, Abdul. The media wants to divide us from the President of the United States. I want to focus far more on the places where I agree with the President. I agree with his tax cuts. I agree with his policies that have reduced 22 regulations for every one that he's added. I agree with his America First foreign policy that's leading to unprecedented movement towards peace around the world. And I'm telling you, when you travel around the state and talk to Indiana Republicans, that's what they want our focus to be on.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, our third question, once again, this came from a number of solicitations we requested at the Indiana Debate Commission. It came about the tone of the campaign. We received comments from several voters about the negative, even nasty tone of some of your campaigns, particularly some of the advertising. And when people think of the term Hoosier hospitality, they think of polite, courteous, and respectful. So on behalf of those voters, we ask, has your campaign lived up to that definition of Hoosier hospitality? And what conciliatory words or gestures would you offer to earn the support of those voters who backed your opponents should you advance to the general election in November? And Mr. BRAUN, this one's, you get to start.
This is an easy one. So the originator of it, and Luke took the brunt of it early, is the guy next to me. And he might have figured that that would work. He ran into the wrong dude with me. But the tone of the campaign is important. And all along, I've talked about being a career businessman, an outsider. And I know it's painful for my competition to have no rebuttal to that. They are on record. And I'll go through more of the details later, and it is embarrassing, especially for all of us conservatives out there. So people do want ideas. You're not going to get it from two guys that have spent their career looking through the lens of a politician. I'm going to be able to weigh in on things like health care and not need to be briefed on it. I've had to solve those problems in my own business. These guys have nothing to show for 25 years in politics, the last 6 to 8 years in the swamp. They certainly have to hold responsibility for that.
Thank you. Mr. Messer, the tone of the campaign.
Well, listen, I've tried throughout this campaign to stay laser focused on Joe Donnelly. We had a lot of attacks coming from these other guys, and I'm the only person in this race that can look you in the eye and tell you that everything that I've said in this campaign is a fact. Okay? It is a fact that independent fact checkers say Todd ROKITA's campaign is mostly false. It is a fact that the Trump campaign demanded he take down his advertisements. It is a fact that Mike BRAUN is a 30-year Democrat, 38-year Democrat who would have you believe that somehow he was just a Republican voting in all those primaries all those years. Though there's no evidence of it, there's no campaign checks to support somebody else. There's not even a picture of a yard sign in his yard. How can we trust him? I want you to know, though, who Mike BRAUN is behind the camera. I confronted Mike BRAUN at one of our events about many of his lies in this campaign, and Mike looked at me and said, you know what, Luke, in this game, everybody makes it up. That's not good enough. We need a true conservative who will be an ally for President Trump and tell the truth, because the truth is how we beat Joe Donnelly.
Thank you, sir. Mr. ROKITA.
You know, I'll tell you, Luke Messer, you keep hearing him, I am who I say I am. And a farmer, I think it was in Boone County, once told me, anyone who has to tell you that is the first one you should suspect. You know, there's an old football adage, and Luke's a football player, he should know this. You are what your record says you are. And everything I've said is true. And I don't want to wait until October, November, whatever it is, for Joe Donnelly to come around and stick a knife in these two guys because of all their baggage. I want it out in the open, and I'm happy to be judged. I've been to every county as your Secretary of State every year for 8 years, driving 45,000 miles a year, and I still do it. I look people in the eye, and I know what's important to you, and equally important, I know what's not important. The fact of the matter is this: both these guys have raised over $1 billion in taxes. Both are for amnesty and a pathway to citizenship. One doesn't live here, and one's been a Democrat his entire adult life. They can't beat Joe Donnelly. I have the record and the fight to take it to Joe Donnelly, to beat him, and to help the president.
Thank you, sir. Somehow my spider sense tells me you all want a little bit of rebuttal time. So, Mr. Braun, we'll start with you. 30 seconds for rebuttal.
I mean, it's almost getting ridiculous, and I think you need to look at where did it all start. These two guys have been enemies from way back in the Wabash College days, and they bring it here. They've been doing it through government, and they're career politicians. The one truth here is they built their lives in politics. I built my life in the real world and came back to my community, voted to weigh in on local elections, and are more conservative than either one of these two guys.
Thank you. Mr. Messer.
Listen, Mike's record is his record. He's a lifetime Democrat, and Indiana Republicans can ask themselves whether they're going to trust him to stand up for us in Washington. This is just the most recent, latest attack from Todd ROKITA. Look, every Indiana Republican knows that Mitch Daniels balanced budgets without raising taxes. I was in the General Assembly fighting alongside him to get that done. We're going to beat Joe Donnelly with the truth, with a true conservative who's a Trump ally.
Thank you. Mr. ROKITA.
You know, Mike Braun continues to talk about the real world. You know what's in Mike Braun's real world? Only in Mike Braun's world can you raise taxes $1 billion and call yourself a conservative. Only in Mike Braun's world can you vote Democrat your entire adult life and call yourself a conservative. Only in Mike Braun's world could you take $400,000 in subsidies for your business, taxpayer subsidies, make yourself a millionaire with those subsidies on the back of taxpayers, and then try to buy a Senate seat with over $6 million in spending.
Right. Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, we now move on to a different area, the issue of the debt crisis. And this question comes from Stephen Coburn from Churubusco. The question is, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office recently reported that the recent tax cuts in the budget bill will result in a budget deficit surpassing $1 trillion by 2020. It also predicted that within 10 years, the federal debt will go to $33 trillion, likely causing a debt crisis. If elected, what actions would you take to help correct that situation? We begin with Mr. Messer.
Well, thank you for the question. Look, I think President Trump is taking many of the steps we need to take to deal with those challenges. First, I don't agree with those estimates. History and current events show that the economy grows when you cut taxes, and we're going to see revenues increase. When you talk to working families, they need to see that pay increase, and they applaud the president for that opportunity. Beyond that, one of the most important things we can do is have a strong military. That's why it's important we made the decisions we make to strengthen our military, because if you believe that peace is expensive, try war. Beyond that, what we need to do is reform the United States Senate and elect conservatives that will stand with President Trump in the fight. Listen, President Trump stood with me in the fight to end the filibuster, these broken Senate rules that lead to too much spending there. To make all those things happen, we're going to have to beat Joe Donnelly. And the way to do that is with a true conservative that will stand with President Trump.
Thank you. Mr. ROKITA.
I'll tell you, Washington and all of government really doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. The tax cuts were good because it returned our property to us, the fruit of our labor, our money, and we can never forget it's not the government's money, it's ours. Mike Braun doesn't understand that. He thinks he's a businessman. Every solution he's had in his long career in public life has been to raise people's taxes. We need to cut spending. That's why I voted against a $1.3 trillion spending bill that put that debt on the backs of our kids and grandkids. It was ridiculous. It didn't end sanctuary cities. Luke Messer voted for it. Didn't end sanctuary cities. Continued to fund Planned Parenthood. Did not build a wall, just a couple miles of some fence. It's absolutely ridiculous. You got to send real leaders to the Senate. Luke Messer mentions this PolitiFact stuff. That's a liberal organization that rubber stamps Democratic ideas. Of course they're going to rubber stamp Luke Messer's campaign because he's the weakest candidate and the one that they want to go against Joe Donnelly.
Thank you. Mr. Braun.
Here's where it really gets funny. 3 years in the state legislature. And these guys have been in politics for close to 25 years each. They've got a record. They've been in D.C. Todd 8 years, Luke 6. Voted alike 95% of the time. And for all the spending bills during the Obama years. And they're on record. Todd only voted differently on these last two because I'm here. I'm a conservative that's holding him accountable. I've had to do a budget for 37 years in my business and grown it at 27 or over 20% a year. That's tough to do. These guys have had their money given to them by taxpayers like me, and they've been part of the problem. You can't send two career politicians there that are calculating their votes to get reelected and based upon who wrote them a campaign check. I've lived it and done it in the real world, and believe me, I'll do it when I get there.
Thank you, sir. Any gentleman like to take advantage of the rebuttal?
Yes.
Mr. Messer.
Yeah.
We'll start with you. We'll just go right down
Let's
the
just
order.
respond. Mike was the last one to talk. A lifetime Democrat doesn't become a conservative Republican overnight. Let's go through some of the presidential nominees why Mike was voting Democrat.
Yes.
Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale, you got John Kerry, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and that's just some. If you are a conservative, you vote conservative. And I think Indiana Republicans have to ask themselves, are they going to allow someone who voted 38 years in Democrat primaries to be our nominee?
And let's,
Mr.
thank
ROKITA.
you, Abdul. And let's think of the Republicans he didn't vote for and could have. Rex Early, Steve Goldsmith, Eric Miller, Mitch Daniels, and the list goes on and on and on. You know, I'm from Lake County, a very Democratic area, and there was a lot of votes that we're going to bring from Northwest Indiana that other Republicans won't be able to get. And I'll tell you this, we always found Republicans to vote for because that's how you build the Republican Party. And Mike, don't talk about paying taxes. You don't pay yours. You have liens on your business.
Mr. Braun.
You know you're circling the drain, and it's fun to watch it when that's all you've got. And they have no idea. We
You
never
don't pay your taxes. And
Just
if you're a
remember,
Democrat.
gentlemen, we have a
Todd,
Lincoln. We have 10 minutes to our Lincoln Douglas era, so you'll be more than happy to say whatever you want. Mr. Braun, please.
And I want that time added back there since he interrupted. But I never voted for a Democrat at the state or national level. And we did it solely to weigh in on our local races. I wasn't calculating to become a career politician like the two of you. I was doing something in the real world. And I know it's hard to take when you're going to be put out of a job. And I'm going to do it.
Thank you. For those of you who just joined us, you are watching the U.S. Senate Republican primary debate sponsored by the Independent Nonpartisan Indiana Debate Commission. Our candidates on stage tonight are Congressman Luke Messer, Congressman Todd ROKITA, and former State Representative Mike Braun. Gentlemen, the question of foreign affairs has come up, and Mr. ROKITA will begin with you. Dealing with international issues is an increasingly important strategic and tense part of Congress. What about Syria, Iran, and the rest of the Middle East? Our relations with Russia, China, and the nuclear ability of North Korea are just a few examples. Have you been involved in foreign affairs during your time in Congress? And to Mr. Braun, for you, the question specifically is, what experience and insight do you have in foreign affairs to bring to the Senate? Mr. ROKITA, we'll start with you and just work our way down.
Thanks for the question. I thought you were going to have me talk about all those different foreign affairs issues in
Not just
in
an
1
umbrella.
minute. Absolutely. You know, one of the principal jobs of a U.S. Senator is to be able to talk articulately and have strong positions on foreign affairs. That's why we have to get rid of Joe Donnelly. He gave Iran, at the behest of President Obama, $150 billion so that they can do, quote unquote, economic development. You know what economic development is in Iran? Especially with the Iranian government? It's terrorism. And so we found Joe Donnelly's mistake. through money in Syria. That's hurting our ally Israel. That's putting us in certain danger. And now there's news reports that that money has gone all the way to North Korea. So we have to have someone strong who has good Hoosier values and good judgment. President Trump has changed the world stage from night to day. Instead of leading from behind like the last president wanted to do, which is to say not lead, we are leading through strength again and taking our place in the world. He will have my support in his foreign policy agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Braun.
Again, easy for these two guys to now latch on to President Trump because he's an outsider, he's a disruptor, he's shaking things up. They again have a record. They've been there 6 and 8 years respectively. They've been part of the problem. What we need there are folks that think differently. We don't send the cream of the crop to D.C., people that calculate it for a career. One touts himself as a very hard worker, the other one with political aptitude. Well, aptitude doesn't take much. It's more about your backbone than when you get there. I can tell you when I get there, you're going to get hard work and aptitude, but the experience that comes from really doing something, not the experience and the wits you get from being a career politician. That's going to be the main difference. I'm going to be able to weigh in because I've strategically built a business, and when it comes to foreign affairs, a lot of those same principles work even there.
Thank you. Mr. Messer.
America is safest when America is strong, and we are far stronger under the leadership of this president. Here's a couple things that folks watching tonight can look up. I was almost the first member of Congress to talk about the fact at the beginning of the Trump presidency, even a few days before, that we already had the authorization to start building the wall. I have led efforts to try to nominate President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize because what's happening in North and South Korea is extraordinary. The only reason it's happening is because President Trump has stared down this evil dictator in North Korea, and he now knows there's a new sheriff in business. But you know, Mike keeps talking about thinking differently. I think it's important to ask yourself this question. What other lifetime Republican do you know who voted Democrat in Democrat primaries for 38 straight years? We're not going to beat Joe Donnelly and get President Trump an ally on foreign policy that he needs with another Joe Donnelly.
Thank you. You gentlemen like to take advantage of the rebuttal? Great. We'll just go on to the next question then. This works just fine. But we're coming up on our Blinken Douglas segment in just a bit. But gentlemen, a quick issue regarding trade. The Republican Party has long understood free trade makes us all more prosperous. Given those facts, what is your position on the current trade policies and tariff policies? And are you concerned about the impact a trade war might have on Hoosier workers whose jobs might be at risk? Mr. Braun, we'll start with you and just work our way down.
I think, you know, trade has been a recent topic, and I think President Trump did it just right. He came up with a solution to at least get the conversation going, and he called out China. And China has not been engaging in a free and fair way. He brought them to the table and now getting results. Did the same thing, you know, with North Koreans, not involving trade, but he's changed the dynamic. And I think and these guys, you know, voted to fast track Obama's trade deals. And now they're acting like, you know, they're going to be on the Trump train when it comes to trade. These guys have a record fast-tracking the Obama trade deals. Where were they then? Now, of course, they're for President Trump because he's shaking things up and he's doing a good job with the economy. Where were they when it came to speaking up about tax reform and all the things that have occurred since then? They were silent because they had no game and they weren't leaders out there.
Thank you. Mr. Messer.
Well, first I want to say to your listeners, it is my understanding that Romeo Langford has said he's going to IU. Right? So the fact that anybody's hanging in here, you know, that if you're hanging in here on this instead of watching that, then we appreciate your opportunity to be here, but that's a big deal. Listen, China has been at war, in a trade war with America for a very long time. And the Hoosiers I talk to, farmers and in manufacturing, appreciate this president's leadership. I've talked to an engine manufacturing facility in Evansville who said that they can't sell products into a market because China sells those engine products at a cost that is equal to the material cost of the American producer. But here's another example where, you know, either Mike Braun is just willing to say anything to get elected or he doesn't understand the facts. The legislation I voted for gives President Trump the authority to negotiate a tougher NAFTA deal, to get tougher on our South Korean trade too. It's exactly the kind of tool we need to give this President of the United States, and I was proud to help him.
Thank you. Congressman ROKITA.
Well, I'll tell you, Luke's right about that. Mike Braun doesn't have any idea what he's talking about. More likely, he'll want to do or say anything to get elected. You can't have 535 members of Congress negotiate a trade deal. That's why you fast-track it. The same exact authority President Trump is asking us to give him now. That's how you get a better trade deal. I am for his targeted tariffs. I was just talking with an employee at Nucor Steel just today, and he was saying how important it was so that we can get the manufacturing sector back and steel production back in this state and across our nation so we can make things again. That's very important. I was with farmers just last week, and yes, they are concerned, and I'm going to watch out for them. And if they are inequitably harmed, or any sectors inequitably harmed, once we have objective information, we'll tweak it. But you can't get a better deal by doing things the way they've been done for the last decades, and that's what President Trump is changing. Mike Braun, the only thing he knows about trade is that he imports products from Mexico to displace Indiana workers, making millions to buy a Senate seat.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Braun, you want to use your 30 seconds for rebuttal?
Let's make it clear. They voted to fast-track Obama's trade deals. Now they're acting like it's a tool for President Trump. They're on record doing that, just like they were on record for increasing spending and debt $500 billion, just like they're on record for voting for executive amnesty and Planned Parenthood. It's in the record. They can't escape it. I know it's tough, and they try to segue to try to twist it. It's just the truth. That was Obama's fast-tracking, and look at the trade deals we got into. We're now fixing them.
Thank you. Congressman Messer, you're up next.
Not one trade deal passed under Obama with the authority you've cited. Not one, Mike. And you know it. But listen, if you're a 38-year lifetime Democrat who's trying to hide that from Hoosiers, I guess you'll make up anything to try to convince people of something different. The challenge for Mike Braun is as people are starting to learn the truth about who you are, your campaign's collapsing.
Congressman ROKITA, any rebuttal or?
Yes, thank you. Not one trade deal passed for President Obama. We made sure of that because they were bad deals. Mike Braun has no idea what he's talking about because he doesn't understand the issues and doesn't care to understand. He is running a TV ad war, spending $6 million to try to buy a Senate seat. My fellow Hoosiers, don't let him do it. He is a Democrat in disguise. The only thing he knows how to do is raise your taxes, the largest in state history.
Thank you, gentlemen. We now come to the segment of tonight's debate where the candidates can speak on a topic of their choice. The first candidate will introduce a topic and speak on it up to a minute and a half, and then the next two will follow up on that same topic for the maximum of 1 minute each. And then the candidate will introduce the topic. We'll close it out with up to 30 seconds. Don't worry, we got it all figured out here. The other two candidates will then get the same opportunity to speak on a topic of their choice in that rotation. And first, we will hear from Congressman Luke Messer in this Lincoln Douglas portion of our debate. Congressman, you have 90 seconds.
President Trump needs an ally in the United States Senate. And Hoosier Republicans deserve a true conservative senator who will stand up for the things we believe. We don't have that today in Joe Donnelly. Joe Donnelly says he's conservative when he's back home in Indiana, and he goes to Washington and votes with his party's liberal Democratic leadership 85% of the time. I am who I say I am. I'm a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment conservative who supports President Trump. And not just against attacks in the liberal media or even in some campaign. I support President Trump when it comes to the tough decisions we have to make to govern. When President Trump asked me to support funding for our troops in the beginning of funding for our wall, I voted yes. My opponents on the stage have said they would both vote no. When President Trump asked me to support national security reforms and infrastructure reforms, one of my opponents led the fight against those reforms. Hoosiers need a true conservative in the United States Senate. President Trump needs a conservative ally in the United States Senate. And that's the kind of conservative that's going to beat Joe Donnelly. I'm Luke Messer. I am who I say I am. I'm a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment conservative, and together we're going to beat Joe Donnelly this fall.
Congressman ROKITA, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Sounds really slick. You know, it is. All Luke Messer can do is pander to the president now because he was working against the president. And that's why the Trump Indiana team from 2016 didn't endorse any of these two. They endorsed me because through thick and thin, we stood with the president against crooked Hillary Clinton. And those of you viewing tonight who did the same thing, thank you. We literally saved the country. I think it's that Luke Messer is belittling the volunteers, thousands of them, including Rex Early and Tony Samuel, by not agreeing that they've endorsed me and that the Trump Indiana 16 team is for me because I was for them saving this country. And you don't have to believe me. Go to TODDROKITA.com and you will see news interview after news interview on national TV, Luke Messer disparaging this president. So all I can do now is continue to vote, 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 and try to convince you guys that he is for the president. That's unhealthy. I'm always going to put Hoosiers first.
Thank you. Mr. Braun, you have 60 seconds to respond.
So Luke Messer, out there on TV, look at all the clips, didn't like President Trump from the get-go, was a never Trumper, and still, after the nomination, had to be convinced. The guy next to me here, he called the president vulgar and not presidential. And when it comes to the support he's getting in Indiana, I don't think that's coming from the president and Vice President Pence themselves. They told him to take the signs down, because it wasn't reflecting the truth. Well, you can explain that later. But you've got to look at who actually reflects the pathway and the background of President Trump, not two people that have been publicly against it and only came when it was embarrassing because they had to. When the handwriting was on the wall that we were going to have an outsider, somebody that's done something in the real world, be our next president.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. We now begin round two of our Lincoln Douglas portion of our debate. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're absolutely right. Mr. Messer, you get to respond.
The rules, not me. Right?
Go right ahead. You have 30 seconds to close.
Listen, I tell you what Hoosiers care about. They want to know who's going to be an ally and a partner with President Trump. Over the last 2 years, that's precisely what I've done. You can look it up. I'm the person on this stage that has most supported President Trump on the hard choices it takes to govern. Look, these guys are not who they say they are. One guy's a lifetime Democrat trying to hide it. The other guy was asked by the Trump campaign to pull down his yard signs because they misrepresented the president's support. And they did that because, frankly, he's not there on the hard votes for this president.
Thank you. You guys are doing so good on time, I was getting ahead of myself. So there we go. Now for round two, ladies and gentlemen, of our Lincoln Douglas-style debate. Congressman ROKITA, you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you. Like I said, this campaign comes down to who you can trust. Who you can trust to be tough enough to beat Joe Donnelly and tough enough to help this president drain the swamp. The swamp has been against this president since day one. The fake news media, the deep state bureaucrats, the Republican establishment like Luke Messer and Abdul, the Democrats like Mike Braun, they continue to be against this president. The latest iteration of that is the Mueller witch hunt. The Mueller investigation has gone on for a year, $20 million. Mueller has to show his cards or fold his hand. And the only cards he's shown us so far are the jokers. Crooked Hillary Clinton, Comey, McCabe, others. The only evidence of criminality has been from them. This investigation, this witch hunt, must end. So later this week, I'm filing a congressional resolution to call for ending that investigation in 30 days. It's been or show evidence about the president obstructing anything, and they can't, and they haven't. So it comes down to who do you trust to be strong enough with the president to defend him? When the establishment Republicans, when the news media, when the Democrats are getting ready to wrongfully impeach this president, who are you going to trust to stand by your side? And that's me, your former Secretary of State who has always fought for this state, who has always put the interests of this state above any kind of personal gain or anything else. We got photo identification at the polling places done. We gave 300 years of jail time to white-collar criminals. It's the same work I'm going to do as your next U.S. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. ROKITA. Once again, I'd like to remind our candidates the reason why the moderator is here and not there is because the moderator is not on the ballot. The moderator, just those gentlemen, are on the ballot. Mr. Braun, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Okay. Todd talks about trust. And I always think you got to view trust by looking at your record. And when he and Luke so recently were out there on TV. Everybody heard it. You know, that's why you call it the swamp. I call them the Swamp Brothers. You ought to go to my website, theswampbrothers.com, and look at all the gory details of where they're out of sync with the president. And when people come on board after it's a foregone conclusion, that doesn't mean anything. That's what you do out in the swamp. These guys vote together 95% of the time, and most of that was against the Trump agenda. They're on board now because he's shaking, he's disrupting. But it's disingenuous to act like you were Trump supporters from the get-go when you were exactly the opposite.
Thank you. Mr. Messer, you have 60 seconds.
Well, listen, Todd started by, we need to talk about trust. So let's talk about a few facts. It is a fact that independent fact checkers say Todd ROKITA's campaign is mostly false. If you don't want to believe them, then ask the Trump campaign. Because it is one thing to try to mislead voters into believing that there's some sort of implicit President Trump endorsement, but it is something else to have the Trump campaign literally demand that you take down your signs and some other advertisements. Todd ROKITA says he's got the president's back, but on the tough votes for governing, when the president asked us to support our troops, when he asked us to start funding the border wall, Todd ROKITA said no, frankly, twice. Okay? And, you know, you want to know the truth about why he didn't want Abdul to be our moderator? It's because Todd ROKITA in a radio interview called for gas tax hikes. But he doesn't want anybody to know that and talk about it. You can look that up. You can find it on air.
Yep.
Once again, remind everyone, the moderator, not on the ballot. You gentlemen are. Thank you very much. Mr. ROKITA, you have 30 seconds to close.
Yeah, these are false choices that the establishment Republicans and Democrats foisted on the president. You look at that press conference, he was not happy at all to have to sign that bill. He was surprised by it because he was lied to. That's the fact. And it is also the fact that the Trump Indiana team from 2016 didn't endorse any of these two, even though they both asked. One begged. They endorsed me, because I was with him through thick and thin when it mattered the most, when we were saving the country from crooked Hillary Clinton. You know, Mike Braun has all kinds of nickels to rub together to buy a Senate seat. He couldn't find one dime to
That is
give
your
the
time.
president.
Thank you. We're now to round three. Mr. Braun, you get 90 seconds to start the topic.
You know, when you do something in the real world, you don't put up with the fantasy topics that we've discussed here, and you're measured the old-fashioned way. And that's by year after year doing something. You can listen to anything that these two career politicians say, but they've got records, and I'll review them again so you don't miss out on it. But really, what this ought to be about is who genuinely has lived a life and done something similar to, say, what President Trump has done and what other enterprisers have done around the country that pay the bills for government and then have bureaucrats and politicians screw things up. It's very simple. When I'm out there, people want to know the difference. Why are you the one that should be elected? Well, not only because I'm leading the race and a clear difference to Joe Donnelly, these two guys look the same, it's because just like President Trump, I've built real things. In my business, I had to tackle health care, solve that problem, and actually lower costs. These guys gave us Obamacare and couldn't repeal it. When I go there, I'll be able to weigh in on it. I'll be able to weigh in on infrastructure because we're a state that did something and made those hard decisions when these guys have been sliding by to enjoy all the perks and pay, not to mention the pension they'll walk away with and the insurance that no one else has. That's the real difference.
Mr. Messer, you have 60 seconds, sir.
I want to ask this question again. Who else do you know who is a lifetime Republican but voted for 38 straight years in Democrat primaries? It doesn't ring true. And if Mike Braun's not telling the truth about that, then what else is he not telling the truth about? Mike Braun is not an outsider. He's been a 14-year office holder. He was a Democrat into the Obama years and through all of the Mitch Daniels years. He's a wealthy enough man to spend $6 million trying to fulfill his ambition now, but throughout all of that time didn't support any Republicans, not Mitch Daniels, Dan Coates, John Hostetler, Larry Bouchon, or others. As Todd said, he didn't even write a check to the President Trump campaign. Listen, We already have a lifetime Democrat senator who says he's conservative and who says he'll work with President Trump. We need a true conservative senator that we can trust. That's who I am. That's why I asked for your vote.
Mr. ROKITA, you have 60 seconds, sir.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I think we should be offended. This man just said he didn't bring up any issue and just said these issues have been make-believe so far. I think these issues that have been covered so far are very important and important to us. And he doesn't understand that because he's running a cardboard cutout campaign. He has no substance behind him, and yes, he's been a Democrat his entire life. Here's something else he did. He's been on the school board for 8 years or so in his county. He ushered in Common Core. He took Obama's race to the top bait money, and in exchange for that money, he issued Common Core in his county. I ended Common Core at the federal level through a bill I wrote for over 4 years, co-sponsored and got passed. To Luke Messer's credit, he voted for it as well. We ended Common Core at the local level. Mike BRAUN continues to foist it on his voters and his taxpayers at the local level. And we're winning the race. I'm pleased for everyone that's voted so far. We're 10 points ahead on scientific polling for those who've already voted, and I ask you to come to the polls and vote.
Thank you, sir. Mr. BRAUN, you have 30 seconds, sir.
The only public polling that's been out there was a week ago, and it showed these guys behind at least 10 points. It showed them getting beat by Joe Donnelly by 15 points in one case and about 18 in the other. And the reason is because they're the cardboard cutouts of career politicians. If you're going to where you're saying serving on your school board can't put you in the same class as guys that have spent 25 years in politics, that's laughable. They're circling the drain. They know they're losing their career job, and thank goodness.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, back to the Q&A part. Before we end up with our closing statements, one of the questions the debate commission got, ironically enough, was about medical marijuana.
Can I ask you, so is this the last question or the close?
This is the second to last question, then we'll get to the close.
And who's up?
Mr. Messer, you'll be up. Quite simple, ladies and gentlemen, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, states around us that have had a law that has legalized marijuana in one capacity, either medicinal or for recreational. Is it time for Indiana to look at medicinal marijuana and Congress enact a law? Leave it up to the states. Because of our short time, I'm going to see if you gentlemen can do this in under 60 seconds, and we'll just go straight to our close.
30 seconds?
30 seconds if you can.
Listen, in 30 seconds, my answer would be this. At a time when our state is dealing with an opioid crisis, I don't know why we would open the door to the biggest gateway drug that's frankly known. I believe in federalism. We have a federalist system. There are some other states that are looking at this. I just see no reason why Indiana should get in the front of the line. What I want to do is stand with our law enforcement, and I want to get busy trying to deal with the opioid crisis, not open the path to new drugs.
Thank you. Mr. ROKITA?
I stand with our prosecutors. I stand with our law enforcement. I stand with our Attorney General Curtis Hill, who don't want this gateway drug because it will make the opioid crisis worse. It will make our drug crisis worse and more expensive in human life and in money, in our taxpayer money. So we have to be very careful. At the same time, our oldest son, Teddy, has a very rare and severe neurological disorder. He'd be helped by the oil where the THC is removed. So that I think we can continue to explore and find ways, but the linchpin is to remove that THC so it's not a gateway drug.
Thank you. Mr. BRAUN?
I think it's clear on recreational marijuana. When it comes to medical marijuana, I think that's going to be decided by the states. It's happening just in front of us. And I think I believe that the power should be returned to local governments and state governments, and I think that'll work itself out over time. That's where I stand on that.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was our final question, ladies and gentlemen, for the candidates. And now we get ready to move into closing thoughts and closing statements. And we will begin with Congressman ROKITA. You have 60 seconds, sir, for your closing statement.
Thank you very much. Again, this comes down to who you're going to trust to be tough enough to beat Joe Donnelly, to be the true ally for President Trump in the Senate. And I have the fight and the record serving the state to get that job done. Those of you who know me know that that's the case. We fought the battle to have photo identification at the polls, and now 30 states, we were the first, and now 30 states are able to do that. I'm 100% pro-life without exception or apology. I have an A rating from the NRA because I understand that we have a God-given inalienable right to defend ourselves. And I'm the only one up here that has never voted to raise your taxes, and I never will, because that's not the solution to anything. I want to help President Trump end the illegal immigration problem, by building a real wall, by ending sanctuary cities and slapping handcuffs on those local politicians who don't abide by the law. I want English as our official language to unify us. I have the fight and the record to get all this stuff done, including having term limits and the most aggressive lobbying ban on the Hill so that we don't have this as stepping stones for future lobbyists. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your vote.
Mr. Braun?
You know, President Trump was right. He made a clear statement. We do not need more career politicians in Washington. We need people that have lived things in the real world. Regardless of what these guys have thrown out, it's mostly doesn't make sense because they've never done anything in the real world. They've been endorsing the backside of government or political checks for their entire career. I've been signing the front side, creating jobs, having families work for me year after year. You need folks that have lived in the real world. If you're trying to send the same kind of people that we've been recycling through the farm system of politics, you're going to get the same results. I want to make it really simple. Todd ROKITA is a lawyer that never really practiced a career politician. Luke Messer is a lawyer that never really practiced career politician. Joe Donnelly is a lawyer that never really practiced career politician. I'm an entrepreneur that's did it in the real world. I ask for your support and your vote.
Thank you. Congressman.
You know, there may not be a better indication of who these guys really are than the answer a couple questions back where they both cited phony poll numbers to try to trick you somehow in this campaign. I can tell you this, Hooters don't care about those poll numbers, they care about the truth. We're going to win this campaign because I am who I say I am. I'm a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment conservative who supports President Trump. I've got a record that proves it. These guys are not who they say they are. One guy got asked by the Trump campaign to pull down his advertisements because he was faking the president's support. The other guy can try to cover it up all that he wants. He's a lifetime Democrat, and a lifetime Democrat doesn't become a conservative Republican overnight. Our best weapon against beating Joe Donnelly is the truth, because Joe Donnelly's not who he says he is. He says he's conservative and he votes with their party's liberal leadership 85% of the time. I am who I say I am. I'm going to support President Trump. I'm conservative, and together we'll beat Joe Donnelly this fall.
And thank you, candidates. Thank you all for being here tonight to share your views on these important issues. Thanks to all the folks at the Indiana Debate Commission, League of Women Voters, and WFYI. And by the way, you can all go out and tweet that you won the debate tonight. Thank you all very, very much for being with us. And be sure to vote on the May 8th primary. Thanks once again. I'm ABDUL-HAKIM SHABAZZ. Have a good evening.